All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this public meeting of the revised DBE goal methodology. My name is Brian Hendricks. I'm the Deputy Director of IDOT's Office of Business and Workforce Diversity, and going to be presenting an overview of our methodology, which is listed on our website, and you should also hopefully received an e-blast with a link to all of that. But we wanted to take this time to thank you for being with us today. And a couple of housekeeping items. I went ahead and selected mute all except for the co-hosts of our meeting. We've been getting some background noise there. I will disable that, of course, during the conclusion of the presentation. But for now, I'll be giving the presentation and then opening it up for comment. So first is this welcome meeting overview, then an explanation of our process, the goal document, and the methodology used. And then at the conclusion of that, like I said, we will leave the floor open to all of you for comments and questions. You should notice at the bottom of the screen, of the WebEx screen, a button that looks like this, a hand upraised on the left-hand side and a smiley face on the other. If to signal that you would like to speak, go ahead and click on that raised hand, and a couple of us, my co-hosts assisting me here, will be able to help navigate that part of the process. All right. So a little background and an overview of the process. Why are we doing this? Normally we do this right around summertime of, I think we did this the same process 2 years ago on what was supposed to have been a 3-year goal. But here we are a little early doing this again. And I think all of you know the reasons why, but just in case, we'll do a brief overview of the process and why this goal cycle is different. On October 3rd, 2025, the United States Department of Transportation issued an Interim Final Rule, which we refer to as the IFR, that made significant changes to our federal DBE program. And this IFR required all state DOTs to reevaluate every certified DBE firm in the directory, in the Unified Certification Program, or UCP directory. Here in Illinois, that affected 5 entities that have DBE certification authority, that being, of course, Illinois Department of Transportation, City of Chicago, Chicago Transit Authority, or CTA, Metra, and Pace Bus, or PACE. So that put a stop to the program as we knew it at that time, and it called for a reevaluation period. And during that reevaluation period, IDOT and the other 4 were directed to cease including DBE goals on projects and to stop counting DBE participation toward its overall goal. And the UCP directory was down for a while, as I'm sure you recognized. The reevaluation process reduced the number of currently certified DBEs in Illinois, and some previously certified firms are still pending reevaluation. You know, in a perfect world, every single DBE in our directory would have been reevaluated and once again be in the DBE directory. That was not the case, despite our very best and well-intentioned efforts, which I'll outline here shortly. So these changes with the IFR directly shaped the goal setting methodology described in this meeting. And this goal methodology will cover Federal Fiscal Years 2026 through 2028, which we are already in, actually. Here was our timeline. The goal, the IFR was effective on October 3rd. It was announced end of September, but it was printed in the Federal Register on the 3rd of October. We issued a joint letter to all DBEs regarding these requirements, and those of you who were DBEs at the time received this. You have to submit a personal narrative and an updated personal net worth statement. The presumption of disadvantage based on race and gender was is now a thing of the past, and everybody needs to still, if you haven't, a personal narrative explaining disadvantage. So that letter went out, and our outreach calls began immediately on the 17th. We had a town hall at Malcolm X College in Chicago. We launched district by district workshops on the IFR across all 9 IDOT districts in the state of Illinois. Additional town halls at Olive Harvey College in Chicago, a virtual town hall. On January 20th of this year, we were able to republish the UCP DBE directory online with a disclaimer about the IFR. And then on January 31st, that was our submission deadline that we had instituted at the end of last year, saying that by January 31st, that's the deadline for the DBEs to submit their personal narrative and updated personal net worth statement. Now, if you miss that deadline, that doesn't mean you are out of it for good. We are still, receiving those documents, and we will and are considering you for a future inclusion, re-inclusion in the DBE directory. That was just the deadline that we set to evaluate as many of the DBE materials that came in so that we could get to this point of establishing and reinstituting goals. So March 24th, those 564 firms who submitted their materials by the deadline, we were able to notify the U.S. Department of Transportation that we had reevaluated all 564. And of course, that led to this month where we had finished our goal methodology and made it public to submit to the US DOT for consideration and approval, and so that we can once again begin placing goals, DBE goals, on IDOT projects. So the process of setting the goal, the overall goal, is a process that requires multiple steps that have been outlined by the federal government. And 49 Code of Federal Regulations Part 26 requires this 2-step process, and you have to also project at the end of that how much of that goal will be met through DBE neutral participation and how much of it will be through DBE conscious participation. Those of you who have been familiar with this for a long time probably know that these are new terms. It used to be called race neutral, race conscious, but we are now using the DBE prefix. So the first step that we and every other entity does is we have to determine a base figure of the goal, and that is where we calculate the ratio of available DBE firms to all available firms, DBE or not. That's not the entire universe of both. We look at specific NAICS codes. In other words, we look at not just every business, but businesses that have been certified in the type of work that we need done on our projects, those NAICS codes, and it's weighted by IDOT spending. After all those calculations that are spelled out in the goal document, the PDF, our result was 14.4%. 14.4% of all available firms to do the work we need are DBEs that are ready, willing, and able to do so. So that's what's called the base figure, the first step. Now, step 2 allows us to adjust that base figure if need be, considering other factors like past DBE participation. Maybe we've had in the past few years, we've had a goal achievement that was 17% or 7%, in which case we could make a justification for 14.4 not being the final figure. Disparity study data, other evidence to determine if an adjustment is warranted. Due to several factors, past DBE participation is kind of we're in a whole different universe now than we were just a year ago when, past participation was in play. And so we don't have any recent disparity study data that we could use. And there wasn't really any of this kind of material or data that we could use to consider adjusting the base figure. And so the result there was, no, we don't really have a sufficient basis for adjusting it, and we are going to keep it at 14.4%. And as I mentioned earlier, this process of determining your final figure, concludes with a computation of how much will be met by DBE conscious means and DBE neutral means. DBE conscious, we say that 12.4% of our 14.4% will be met through DBE conscious means. That is placing DBE goals on projects. That, we put a percentage on a specific project. That percentage is met, and that percentage is counted as DBE conscious. 2.0% we anticipate will be met through DBE neutral means. DBE work performed that exceeds DBE goals on a contract. For example, we could have a 10% DBE goal on a project, and a DBE or DBEs are utilized for 13% of it. Well, that extra 3% is considered DBE neutral. If you're a DBE prime, then that is considered DBE neutral. If it's a contract that had no DBE goal on it at all, but you had some achievement on it, then that's DBE neutral. And this is a pretty simple computation. They take the past few years of how we did on the race neutral side and average those out. I think that's what the mean is. I always seem to get that mixed up, but that's the average of the past 3 years. We met our goals by an average of 2%. So that's what we're doing at this time. Okay. I'm going to do a brief but deep dive on these different steps, and then we'll get to your comments. But in determining the base figure, how many ready, willing, and able DBEs are out there compared to all firms? We analyze prime contracts and subcontracts for federal fiscal years 2017 through 2021. That was the last range in which we had complete data to work with. And we looked at 51 different NAICS codes, over $5 billion of total contract value. There's a part of the study where you have to define the relevant geographic market area. And of course, that for us is the state of Illinois. Over 90% of our contracts were awarded to firms in the state of Illinois. You had some in St. Louis, Iowa, end of the Quad Cities, but over 90% were here. We utilized data from the UCP directory and by Census Bureau County Business Patterns, or CBP, databases, and that was used primarily to get the NAICS code information for the non-DBEs. So you take the number of DBE firms in each NAICS code divided by all the firms in the same codes and weigh that by IDOT spending patterns, and that's what helped us along the way with figuring out the 14.4. Here you look at some of those NAICS. Of course, 237, 310, highway, street, and bridge construction, that accounted for about 65% of all of our spending. And you have a few others here, all the way down to engineering services, the 541, 330. And you look at the availability of the firms, 20.4% of DBEs are dealing with a NAICS code that got about 65% of the spending. So there is some weighting that needs to take place because this isn't necessarily an apples to apples comparison. And that's how we calculated a weighted DBE availability of 14.4%. And if all of this, if I'm going too fast, if you're a little lost in the weeds, this is being recorded, and I'll be glad to share the link with everybody here of a link to the video of this public meeting. And of course, feel free to contact us back too if you think of any questions or comments afterwards. Step 2, the base figure adjustment. It's where we evaluate whether any adjustment to the base figure was necessary. And due to the significant changes resulting from the IFR, including the requirement to reevaluate all certified DBEs and a complete pause on goal setting and goal credit counting, past DBE participation wasn't a very reliable predictor of future participation. As I mentioned earlier, it's a whole new world. So that was the main reason by which we decided that no adjustment to the base figure was appropriate. And you see these 4 bullet points here that further spell this out. The IFR required us to reevaluate all certified DBE firms, and that resulted in a decreased number of currently certified DBEs. A portion of the previously certified firms have not yet completed their reevaluation and are ineligible for goal credit. So making prior participation data that made it an unreliable predictor. There's no post-IFR disparity study that can be utilized for this, and no evidence from related fields have been identified that would support that an upward or lower, frankly, adjustment to the base figure. And as I explained earlier, the race neutral, excuse me, it's a habit, I apologize. A DBE neutral participation was the average of our last 3 years, 0.6%, 1%, and 4.3%, averaged out to 2.0. Okay, so what are our next steps? We are going to submit this to FHWA. At that time, we are free to resume placing goal on projects at our lettings. It's not the case that it needs to necessarily be approved by FHWA. It's the submitting. It is and that submitting includes this public participation period. And as I've said, every time we've hosted a public meeting, we value your comments, and we have utilized them, and we do take those into account, and they are even going to be included in the final submission that we give to the FHWA. And so at this point, I am going to stop talking and sharing the screen. I want to be able to see who all has a hand raised. I believe, Myron, I think there's someone from, sorry, I have a long way to scroll down here. I see 2 hands. I'm going to recognize Mary Kay. If you could just say your name and the group you're with, and then feel free to make your comment.
Mary Kay Moynihan with WCOE. And I have 2 questions. One is, has IDOT embarked on a disparity study? I think the last one you had was 2017.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you, Mary Kay. We had started that process. It never reached a conclusion when this all this began. So that's we pretty much stopped it right there. We haven't had any. 2017 is the last fully completed disparity study.
I understand. When are you planning to put out for another disparity study?
That I don't know. I don't know if any of my colleagues have any thoughts on that.
Well, right now, this is Brandy Phillips, the director of the Office of Business and Workforce Diversity. Right now, our focus is on meeting the requirements of the Internal Final Ruling. We could probably get back to you when we will be doing another disparity study. But for now, the data that we've come up with did not require us to do a disparity study. But what we did do was conduct a different type of study to come up with our information. This disparity study is much longer, much more information that need to be obtained. So we were not able to take that route, not just for that, but because the data would be different anyway. So just give us some time. We can probably get back to you of when we are going to get a disparity study conducted.
Yeah, because that plays a significant role in what that second review looks like in these goals. And we'd have been in a much better position if we had more current disparity. My second question is it feasible to get a list of the firms that did not, the DBE firms, existing DBE firms that did not go through the reevaluation at this point?
What we are able to share out right now is our firms that are currently in the UCP, and those are our eligible firms. And we also have ineligible firms that are listed in the UCP as well. So that information is visible in our directory.
And can that be sorted like by visible and not, visible and not visible or whatever? I mean, I'm just saying, some of our organizations have talked about reaching out to other firms to make sure, I know you guys did a yeoman's job of getting this out there for everybody, but at the same time, I know from experience that sometimes people just don't pay attention to emails, or they go to spam, or whatever the case may be. So we're just trying to see if we can't encourage more firms to go in. I also know there was a number of firms who didn't reapply because they had a very horrible experience in the beginning when they first applied. So we're trying to, quell those issues as well and try to get more folks back into the program.
Yeah, all of that can be filtered. You can upload it as an Excel spreadsheet and filter it that way too. So you can, pretty easy to see which ones are ineligible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to recognize Colette Holt.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and glad you all are on. To my old friend Mary Kay, maybe you and I can have an offline conversation about what it means to do a disparity study within the confines of the IFR, as well as where the recent federal court decisions are going. I don't know that that's something that we need to go into right now, but I just want people to understand that it's a much more complicated issue now than it used to be, both because of this additional requirement now of some kind of capacity analysis, as well as the fact that there is nothing that ties firms that are certified as DBEs together. In the past, of course, we used race and gender because those were the presumptions that Congress had enacted in the program, that racial and ethnic minorities and white women were presumptively socially and economically disadvantaged. As I think everybody understands, that is no longer the case. So it's not just as easy as, oh, let's just go do a new disparity study, folks. It just isn't. So Mary Kay, I'm always, of course, delighted to talk to you. And maybe you and I can have a conversation offline about it, or anybody else that wants to talk to me, just shoot me an email and we'll find a time to get together.
Thank you, Colette, as always, for all of your help. I'm going to go in the order they're listed on my board here. Jamie, you are the next hand I see.
Hi there. This is Jamie Powell with JP Excavating. And I have two questions, if fine. Are you going to determine your goal settings by merit-based or supply per district?
Those are how the individual contract goals are set up. I'm trying to see if Deborah Lee is here. Sorry.
I believe Deborah's on the call.
Deborah, did you want to answer that?
Sure. So with the IFR, there was no changing in how we set our contract goals. So each contract compliance officer located in the district of where the contract is listed or will be performed will be determining the contract goal based on ready, willing, and able DBEs. They take into account any ones listed in the directory in their district, and they also take into account any DBEs that have stated that they would like to work in the district, in that particular district. They do take that into account. Keeping in mind that when we set our goals, we are restricted based on FHWA, USDOT guidance, that we take 2 or more or 3 or more, depending on where you're located, DBEs to set a contract goal on a specific classification. So the aspirational goal overall is based on all DBEs, but when we look at our contract goals, it's based on those work categories that DBE can perform. I hope that answered your question.
It did. I just wanted to make sure they were staying, similar to what they were. But my other question was, are all districts going to have the 14.4%, or is it going to be dependent on districts?
So the 14.4% goal is an aspirational goal that we are trying to attain over the year, meaning every single contract that has a DBE goal will calculate towards that aspirational goal. Contract goals will be set based on ready, willing, and able, and then they will be determined based on categories, work categories. So it is a difference. 14.4 is the one that we're aspiring to get with every single contract that we set a DBE goal on.
Wonderful.
Along with
glad to hear that.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jamie. My friend Ray, I see your hand up. Oh, let me, sorry about that. Let me unmute you. That would probably help. I thought I was hitting the mute button and then I lowered your hand instead. There we go. Lowered your hand instead. There we go.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Good afternoon. I'm Raymond Kumaple from SE3. And first off, thanks to IDOT and the certifying agencies in Illinois for getting this done so quickly. So my question, I guess it's kind of a two-part question, is after submitting the goal to the FHWA and then approval, how are you going to track projects that currently have DBE firms that may not have recertified yet, or DBE firms that are still in the process of getting recertified?
Deborah, is that something you can take on again?
Sure. So according to there's such an echo. I apologize. According to the IFR, we are not allowed to give gold credit on any projects where a DBE has not been recertified. So we won't be counting gold credit towards those. As far as the ones who are in the process, once they become certified, then we will be able to apply gold credit for those projects at that time. I hope that answers your question. We are still in the determining factor phase of how projects prior to the IFR will be affected by gold credit. But for the most part, any DBE who is not certified after the reevaluation process will not be able to obtain gold credit.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. Pam Simon, how are you?
I'm well. Quick question. What was the overall goal prior to this 14.4?
Prior to, it was at 20.27%.
Okay.
And that was where we, as you remember, Federal Fiscal Year 24, we achieved 20.33%.
Correct.
And first time in at least 15 years that we got over the hump. So
I do remember it well.
yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Pam from the Association of General Contractors. All right, Mr. Trask.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Quick question. Would there be any follow-up discussions about, I heard earlier comments about disparity studies and things of that nature, and I know how it's a totally different landscape now. Will there be follow-up discussions on that, kind of with the heart of what this was all about in the first place, so be able to be maintained, I guess. And I will like to see if there's any kind of follow-up conversations that will happen there.
With regard to the future of disparity studies, I'll have to defer that to our director. I'm sure they will, but I have no idea what the timetable would look like for that. But
Yeah, I would say right now we don't anticipate doing a disparity study just yet. As I indicated, that's something that we'll probably look at in the future. But once we start to dive into disparity studies as we move forward, we absolutely will have discussion and conversation, and there's an opportunity to discuss further. We will make sure that we inform our DBE community.
thank you for that. Ms. Simon, did you have a follow-up, or did you your hand is still up? I don't know if it was lowered or not.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Donna, good afternoon. Donna, you are recognized.
Good afternoon. This is Donna Herpich with Great Lakes Metals. My question is, do you think the DBE participation goals will be effective with the next July IDOT letting, or is it going to be further down the line?
We anticipate, if all goes well, as soon as we possibly can. We want to put goals on contracts, so I would just wait in anticipation that could possibly be the case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our good friend Jackie Gomez from Hacia. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, thanks, Brian. Thanks, IDOT, for hosting very informative conversation. My question is, I understand that some of the other Illinois UCP agencies have already started their a small business set-aside program, I guess, if that's what they call it. How does that impact a DBE neutral program, if any? Hope that makes sense.
I guess I'm confused when you say a DBE neutral program. Are you just talking about a small business program specifically?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of, for instance, CTA has, their small business program, and they're doing set-asides already. Maybe then the question is IDOT planning to do that? And then if so, how is it different from the DBE neutral program or DBE goals?
Okay, I think I got what you're saying. So we are in the development stages of a small business program now. We're hoping to have something ready either by the end of the year or beginning of the year. We will make sure that we're sending out communication as we develop forward to make sure that we're updating on what that small business program would look like. How does it impact our DBE program? In the future, we plan on at some point putting small business goals on contracts. We will not put small business goals on contracts where DBE goals are on. So it'll either be one or the other is what we're currently looking at. In terms of set-asides, our small business program of what we're developing and the communication that we've had is our understanding that there is a need for set-asides in the construction space. And so we are looking at doing some things with small business set-asides as well. And what we're looking at doing is kind of enhancing a small business approach that allow for DBE and small business participation to take place at IDOT, because this is a comment period for our DBE aspirational goal. I don't want to get too far into the weeds of our small business, but those are our next steps.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Director, for taking that question on. Apologize in advance. I try to be as fair as possible and go in order, but I'm exercising my discretion here. Whenever I see Colette's hand raised, I'm going to call on her because she most likely has some clarification on matters. So go right ahead, Colette.
Thank you, Brian, and I'm not trying to like jump in front of everybody.
You're fine. You're fine.
Hey, Jackie. I think, and I know you understand this very well, but I just want people to be clear about the difference between DBE neutral goals, which are DBE neutral participation, which is on contracts that are not subject to any type of small business tool or element. So CTA, under the leadership of Juan Pablo Pietro, was very prescient in getting their SVE program approved by the Federal Transit Administration some years ago. So they have the legal authority today to begin to implement the small business program. The other agencies, at least to my knowledge, at least the city and IDOT, I'm not too sure what Metra or PACE is doing, but we'll need to go back to USDOT to get approval to set SVE contract goals as a revision to the small business element in the DBE program, which is in 49 CFR section 26.39. So it's kind of a complicated interplay there. But DBE neutral, of course, they just took race conscious out and swapped in DBE neutral. So, you know, linguistically, sometimes it doesn't really work, but it just will mean, as was explained, participation that was not as a result of a DBE conscious goal. So hopefully that helps. And if you've got any more questions, I know you know where to find me.
Thank you very much. Alicia, thank you for your patience. You are next.
Hey, hello everyone. I have a question regarding the 14.4% that you made a determination on. Now that was based on data from when? 2022?
Part of it was based on contract data that we had that spanned the federal fiscal years 2017 through 2021. That was the last group that we had a complete set of, you know, the commitments and the payouts and all of that, and it was over $5 billion worth that we were able to use to aid us in the computation of that number.
Okay, but then at that point in time, you had a different number of eligible DBEs, correct? Under
Yes.
the old rule. So your 14.4, did you consider what you have now as eligible DBEs, given that those have gone back and have, you know, provided the necessary information to remain a DBE?
Yeah, the 14.4% was based upon the current number of DBEs after the whole reevaluation process from the January deadline. The data that we're talking about from those past fiscal years involved how we spent money, and that helped us in weighing that figure. To figure out which NAICS codes got the most money versus which NAICS codes have the most DBE universe in them. So the 14.4% is a calculation of current DBEs and current non-DBEs.
Okay. And now would there be consideration of having an aspirational goal for those that are just in a construction NAICS code area, and then another aspirational goal for those that are considered professional services?
No, because this aspirational goal is all encompassing of both construction and engineering. And that's why we weigh it, because, you know, you could have, I'm just throwing out an example. You could have 70% of our DBEs be construction and 30% be engineering. But then if 90% of the spending goes to construction and only 10% to engineering, then that's almost an apples and oranges type comparison, and you need to do that weighing that I talked about earlier. So it's an all-encompassing figure, but it takes the, for lack of a better word, disparity in spending into account. And if Colette or Director Phillips or Deborah have any clarifications on that, I would welcome them once again. But,
okay, and my last question, but again, the assignment of the percentages of the goal is going to be on a case-by-case, project, looking at the availability.
That's correct. On the individual project goals.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to emphasize that. That's all.
No, you're right. Yeah, it can get a little it can get a little confusing for sure. But yeah, that's how we will do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Brian Lurk, thank you for your patience.
No problem. My name is Brian Lurk with Healy & Sons in East St. Louis. I just want to tie a couple comments together. So Friday after the wedding, I downloaded the UCB directory into an Excel spreadsheet. There are about 2,400 contractors listed. Of those, about 1,350 are certified. Of those, about 1,180 are in District 1, which means in Districts 2 through 9, there's only 170 certified DBEs. So if the 14.4% goal is based on a number where 86% of the DBEs are in District 1, that seems to be a little bit off to me. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Because a lot of District 1 contractors and DBEs do not come south of Springfield. So when we're getting close to Region 5, if the majority of the DBs are up in Chicago, that seems to be a little bit off.
All right. Thank you. Colette, I see your hand raised. Did you want to take
So
that one?
let me try a little, on this one. It's important to understand that the federal regulations do not permit a recipient to do anything on the basis of geography. Many years ago, actually it was from Missouri, we tried to get goals district by district, and FHWA said no, and that has been their consistent position. So the data were not disaggregated by districts because there were no results we were going to be able to do anything with if we had done that. But remember, as has been stressed, goals will continue to be set contract by contract. And one of the things that the contracting officer and whoever's working on the goal will look at is the location of the project, the scopes of work, and what DBEs might realistically be able to work on the project given whatever the scope is, right? I mean, nobody's going to drive 400 miles to pour hot mix. So I don't think it's really an issue, but in any event, we are not permitted to do anything on a district by district basis per the regulations, and that's the position that US DOT has always taken.
Thank you. Will Whitaker, thank you for your patience. You're up.
Thank you, and thank you for all your work on this. And Colette, you kind of addressed, I've been sitting there trying to figure out how to ask this question, and Brian kind of helped lead me into this, but I'm wondering how much capacity, the numbers I think relate to the firm, if I understand correctly, relate to firm availability, but not necessarily the capacity of the firms in the pool. So if my capacity is expanded to the extent that I do cover south of Springfield, how is that considered in setting these goals? If it's not reflected in the overall aspirational goal number. I hope I explained that. I mean, I hope I asked that in a way that's clear.
Sure. Colette, go right ahead.
Again, it's important for folks to keep the distinction in mind between the overall triennial goal, which is what IDOT will seek to achieve, rolled up over a 3-year period, and the particular goals on a particular contract. To the extent that your firm, Mr. Whitaker, has expanded its capacity and you are in touch with the district folks at IDOT, and they know that you have perhaps changed your registration so that now you say that you will cover a wider area. That's information that they will take into account when they are setting a specific project goal. But there's no way to do that on an overall basis rolled up for 3 years. You can't manipulate data like that. So, but I think it's not really an issue because of the fact that they will be setting the goals contract by contract based on the specific scopes of work, the location of the project, the availability of DBEs and their capacities, and progress towards meeting the overall triennial goal to date. And those are the factors that are spelled out in the regulations. So hope that helps.
That helps. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go. I'm just now having a chance to look at the chat, and I'm going to cover some questions, or all the questions that are raised in the chat. Can we have the slides? It was one I got privately. The slides, this PowerPoint presentation I shared earlier, along with a link to a video of this public meeting, will be made available to all of our participants here. And it might take a couple of hours to get that link, but it will be sent to you either later today or early tomorrow. And let's see. Without a disparity study, there's no independent validation of availability. Currently, it simply assumes if they were recertified, they are ready and able. That tends to not be true historically on heavy highway contracts. Okay, and then here's a question with the comment. With the bidders list requirement on all IDOT contracts, was this data used in determining the 14.4%? This is real-time data of contractors actually bidding the jobs, DBE and non-DBE. Deborah, I'm going to defer to you. I think we did consider the bidders list, right? In coming up with the 14.4.
Yes, it was considered as a method that we were going to use, and we determined that following the USDOT guidance in the way that we set the goal was the most effective way to set the goal and gave us a higher percentage.
Thank you. Another question asked of me privately, is there a plan in place for handling waiver requests?
I think that we are working on that. We hope to have some clarification coming out soon.
Thank you. And Alma, I see that you have a question in chat, but I also see your hand raised. I'm going to unmute you here, and you can ask that way if you wish.
Yes. Hi, Alma Deo with Hasia. My question is regarding the DBE conscious and DBE neutral. How are those? Can you explain those? If these goals are not going to be race and gender neutral, or they are going to be race and gender neutral, then what does it mean to be DBE conscious and DBE neutral?
It's pretty much the same thing, and I'm going to once again defer to our subject matter expert, Ms. Holt. Go right ahead, Colette.
Uh-oh, I think you're on mute, Colette.
Unmute me. Okay.
Gotcha.
I can't unmute myself. Sorry. Brian was doing just fine. Think of it as just a swap out, and that's what I meant about it's linguistically awkward in many places. But to say something is DBE neutral just means it didn't have a DBE contract goal attached to it. That's what it meant in the prior regs, and that's what it means today. So there'll be DBE contract goals, and then any participation that goes to a certified DBE will now be called DBE neutral, what we used to call race neutral. So if you sort of swap those terms out, maybe it'll make a little bit more sense to you.
And DBE conscious is still specific to race and gender? Oh, you're on mute again.
Hold on a minute, I'll get to you. We have the good problem of having to scroll through a lot of names to get to everybody to unmute. So there you go, Colette.
Yeah, that's right. I would stop muting myself, but there's a lot of construction noise back here. But no, I think this is an important point for people to get their heads around, which is that this program is no longer about attempting to ensure a level playing field for contractors on the basis of race and gender. So no, DBE conscious does not mean race and gender conscious. Race and gender have been written out of the DBE program, folks. So DBE conscious just means, does it have a DBE goal on it? And DBE neutral means it didn't have a DBE goal on it. So in some ways, a little bit simpler because now there's not really that concept of discrimination in the program anymore. But that's all it means. If not, somebody speak up. I'm happy to try again because it's not intuitive. I mean, I can sort of rattle it off because I've been thinking about nothing else since October 3rd, but most of you have realized.
And Colette, let me run this by you just to clarify. I want to make sure folks kind of understand. So when we talk about DBE conscious, right, and DBE neutral, if there is a contract goal that let's say is 10%, right, and the 10% is for DBE conscious, anything over that 10% would be considered DBE neutral. Am I on the right track, Colette?
Absolutely correct. Perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to ask a follow-up. So then what qualifies you to be a DBE then?
Being certified, right? So look at it in terms of this. If you are certified as a DBE, then you're a DBE. It doesn't matter. It's not conscious or neutral, right? You're certified in the DBE program. This is looked at on the side of the contractor. So when the contractor is looking for attainment of participation goals, and we're looking at the data, we can say, you know what, this contractor met their goal, right? Their DBE goal. By way of participation, anything over the participation that they was requested would be considered DBE neutral. So if their goal was only 10%, right, and they did the 12, then 2% of it is DBE neutral. The 10 is the DBE conscious. So it's not necessarily for the actual vendor. It's for the contractor to understand how they're meeting that DBE. And it's for us as the DOT to notate and understand how our vendors and how our contracts are measuring up in terms of DBE participation.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll follow that up just a little bit. I see Jackie Gomez from Hacia has in the chat a follow-up. And why have a 2% DBE neutral goal? Well, Jackie, the short answer is because the regulations require it. That recipients must estimate the percentage of their overall DBE goal, which in this case is 14.4%, that they will reach using DBE conscious measures, which is DBE contract goals, and DBE neutral measures. That's things like outreach, assisting prime contractors, supportive services, whatever. But that's why, is because they have to do it according to the regulations.
Thank you for that clarification once again. I have received a couple of messages that were sent just to me, but and one of them involves, you know, someone who changed their mind and they weren't going to try to recertify and now they want to try. How do you do that? And someone else asked about their reevaluation process. When will they be notified? What I'm going to do is I'm going to include in the chat my email address, and if you have any questions about your certification status or you're interested in having a reevaluation for that status, send me an email and we will get answers for you there. So this is my email address that I'm putting in the chat. The second email address I'm about to include in the chat is for those of you who, you know, maybe if you're like me, you think of something after the meeting is over and why didn't I in the meeting? Until 5 o'clock today, you can provide us with a written comment at this email address here. It's going to be on the I'm going to reshare the PowerPoint and it'll have it on there as well, but I wanted you to be aware of the opportunity to make a comment in writing. And it's dot.dbepubliccomment@illinois.gov. I believe that's right. Myron, you can give me a thumbs up if I think that is right. We would appreciate your written comments as well. And I know we don't have any hands up now, but we are keeping this open. Oh, I'm sorry. Armand Curtis, you are recognized.
Hi, you guys. This is Armand from Stag Construction. So I just wanted a clarification on this DBE status thing. Like, what does that mean for the vendor? Since we can't use sex or race, like what is being considered a disadvantage for what is considered a disadvantage status, if you will?
Well, one of the I'll take a first crack at this, and then my reliable coworkers can back me up or not. Part of this is that the IFR, through their changes, made this pretty much an individualized method of proving disadvantage. So you have to now submit, each DBE that wants to be back in submits a personal narrative describing how you personally are or have been disadvantaged. And then we look at those on a case-by-case basis, and then along with the personal net worth statement. So really the answer is it's on a case-by-case basis. Anybody else want to verify that?
I mean, I'll say, so I think Colette said it best. It's no longer a race and gender-based program. And so your disadvantage is about social and economic disadvantage. Right. And so you have to prove that up, right, by way of a narrative to prove your social disadvantage. And then your personal network statement will provide us information to determine whether or not there is an economic disadvantage.
Okay. Thank you.
And then, you know, I would also say if you have more questions about just eligibility and what the personal narrative needs to include, we would certainly like to hear from you, and we can take more time to delve into eligibility criteria for meeting the standards through personal narrative.
Thank you.
I saw the hand raised by one of our contract compliance officers, Ms. Mullins. I didn't want to ignore that. I know you put it back down again. If your question was answered, that's fine. But I wanted to give you a chance if you wanted to make a comment.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you, Brian. I wanted to ask, does that mean that the DBE special provision has to be rewritten for the contracts because of all the changes, the forthcoming changes?
So there is, there are language included in the special provisions that is reflective of what is needed for the contractor. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be rewritten, right? So we have included some language really articulating that you need to really look at the UCP to determine eligibility. And this is for our prime contractors to determine eligibility when you're seeking to utilize a vendor for DBE participation. You know, we don't have the same amount of DBEs that we had before the IFR came out. And so you just want to make sure that you are getting credit for your DBE that you are utilizing for your gold credit.
Okay, so there's no changes for their.
So this is what I'll say to you, Cassandra. We could talk about this at a later time. If you're looking for information pertaining to how you move forward, we can have that conversation separately.
Well, that's a whole new. We have to have. I don't even have a special provision rewritten, so that's a whole new ballgame. I was just wondering if the ones that FHWA have is going to be rewritten.
No, it's not going to be rewritten, but there is going to be language included in there.
Okay, so there's no language that has to be taken out either.
No, I don't believe that. Deborah, we haven't taken out any language, right? We just added language.
That's correct. We didn't have anything in our special provision that related to presumption of race or gender. So our special provisions didn't need to be rewritten.
Okay, I didn't know if it had anything that related that said race or gender in there. That's why I was wondering. Okay, thank you.
All right. I will reshare my screen because I wanted to thank all of you for attending our public meeting. Like I said, we will have a copy of the presentation and a link to the video part of this presentation. And you can submit comments until 5:00 p.m. this afternoon. And I have my email address in the chat. And let me see here. Let me stop sharing for a moment because I wanted to see. I thought I heard someone. I don't know if they're okay. We're good. So again, this is Brian Hendricks. I wanted to thank you all for attending today's public meeting. This might be a rather odd way to end it, but I'm an optimist. And when I had lunch, my fortune cookie said there's a prospect of a thrilling time ahead for you. So I am claiming that now we've gotten our goals reestablished. We're going to start seeing them on projects again. And after all the challenging times we've had, I hope we have thrilling times ahead. So thank you once again for joining us for this public meeting. We will be in touch, and we thank you for all of your support and your commitment to the DBE program.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. I'll leave it open for another minute or so for people to copy the email addresses in the chat. And Amanda, welcome back. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian.